Actually, I'm going to use the prayer that I sent out this morning as we pray. So the Lord be with you.
And also
with you.
Let us pray. Hands who touch the leper, touch my wounded heart. Hands who healed the blind man, heal my aching soul. Hands who cured the lame, mend my disjointed life. Hands who embraced all life, enfold me in your peace. Lord, merely touch and heal, cure and forgive. This is my prayer to thee, my Lord. Give me strength lightly to bear my joys and sorrows. Give me the strength to make my love fruitful in service. Give me the strength never to disown the poor or bend my knees before insolent might. Give me the strength to raise my mind high above daily trifles, and give me the strength to surrender my strength to thy will with love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Okay, so that everyone knows, and we aren't confused anymore, there's only one good link for Sunday morning formation, and it's titled Sunday Morning Adult Formation on Ring Central. So if it doesn't say Sunday Morning Adult Formation in exactly those words, then it's not. It's just something else altogether. And I encourage you to look for that one. It should be, if you have signed on to Ring Central, it should be, or not to Ring Central, I'm sorry, to Church Suite, which will be our new directory. And that's also a free app. Then if you've signed up for this session, then it should send you an email every Sunday morning. And so we'll look for that, and we'll start making sure that you're getting that on Sunday mornings. Let's see. There wasn't a lot of news from convention. Perry and Chris were there. They can tell you not a whole lot happened. We spent more time debating resolutions, the wording of resolutions, than we did almost anything else. The one positive and completed action that the diocese took is that they're renaming Odie Parish to St. Paul's and St. Mark's on the Mountain, which is the combined name of the African American and white congregations that were originally established down there before the Civil War. So that and passed a budget. That was pretty much it. Unless Gail or Perry, you got anything else you want to add to the whole thing?
No, it was a lot more efficient having, I'm the veteran of many two-day conventions that last until 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. And so this one got everything done, but a whole lot quicker. The downside was I always enjoy seeing people that I know from other churches and interacting with them. So we didn't have that personal touch, but no, yeah, very smoothly got everything done that needed to be done, and nothing really controversial. So it was good.
So, yeah, it was nice. The brevity was nice, but like you, Perry, I missed the fellowship of it, because we could really use some of the fellowship. And it's been hard not to see people for so long. So I was just getting to know some names among the clergy. And now I'm going to have to learn them all over again. So anyway, next weekend will be the vestry retreat, and the staff will be participating in that also. And then 3 weeks from today will be the annual meeting. And that will be both online and I'm hoping in person for those who feel safe and brave. Herlong Hall is vast, and so we should be able to socially distance. This is the new flooring in Herlong Hall, and the drywall repair and painting is going on apace. So I'll be interested to see what it looks like this morning when we get there. Then let's see, on February 17th is Ash Wednesday. We will have 2 in-person services on Ash Wednesday, one at 6:30 in the morning and one at 6:30 or 7 o'clock. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly. And then one at 7 p.m. So I haven't figured out how to do Ashes over live streaming, but we will certainly live stream the evening service for those. What? And then on sometime before Tuesday, the 16th, Jill has plans to create a pancake supper kit for the families in the parish with the youth, and we'll be distributing a pancake supper kit. So I think that's the really urgent parts of it. We're hoping, I think you saw, if you saw my letter in the newsletter, we're hoping that we'll be able to open the church safely on February 21st, which is the first Sunday of Lent. That all depends. It always all depends on vaccinations, on all sorts of things like that. So we'll just have to see how that all comes about. But that's our goal. And if not, then sometime early in March, we hope. And then lastly, Monday is Soul Care.
Monday the 1st.
Monday the 1st is Soul
which is
Care.
a week from tomorrow.
So just so that those of you who are participating.
And that will probably be online.
Right. Right. So anyway, are Ashley and Alan here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
They're not. Okay.
We're probably trying to get everything squared away for live stream.
Right. Okay. Last week, I know there were some problems with the live stream, and that was an equipment issue. Hopefully, we've gotten that solved. It wasn't your computer. It was just that the equipment wasn't functioning the way we were told that it was supposed to. So we're working on that. We're still got a few kinks to get out of it, but we're hoping that that will make a big difference going forward. We're trying to get better picture quality out of the whole thing. So I think that's it. Anything else?
Carry on.
Okay. All right. We're still talking about pride. And, you know, I shared the expression with you all at some point in the sermon about poking cakes. And this morning we may begin poking your cake. But I want to say to you all, please, somehow I would wish I could make a big banner that went across the top of our screen that said, this isn't about making people feel bad. This is about helping people find healing. And that's a really important part of this entire conversation. It's about finding healing so that grace can work in your lives, because there are all sorts of ways that we stiff arm both grace and God on a regular basis. So let me start sharing the slides. We're still talking about pride, and I'm going to give you this slide as a definition. Hang on, let me get this started as a slideshow. Looks so much better that way. Pride is an irreligious and antisocial assertion of the self. Okay, irreligious in the sense that pride substitutes self for God, and doesn't like being subordinate to God. Antisocial in that ultimately pride is all about me. And so no matter how much someone who struggles with pride may have an image that they're caring for others, what they're doing is caring for others or feeding the image of someone who cares for others. So, but that's the shortest definition I've come across. I like that one. It's an irreligious and anti-social assertion of the self. There's a quiet side to pride. We all know the kind of noisy one, you know, the narcissist, the true, you know, braggart, and all of those sorts of things that we know that can be very loud. But I think that we need to look at the quieter side, because in fact, that's where it gets most of us. You don't start out on the noisy side. You start out on the quiet side. People who struggle with pride are fundamentally insecure. Okay, they want to be loved and adored. They can have a savior complex. You know, nobody does it like me. Nobody can save you like me. I can fix everything. They can be very controlling, managing other people and their environment. So that everything someone else does comes under the authority and purview of someone who struggles with pride. That's especially true in intimate relationships, family, and close friendships. They're actually very, very competitive, although they will tell you that they're not. They want to be the favorite or the star in the room at all times. They can be quite angry if they're unappreciated. The sort of standard image is the image of the Jewish mother. You know, look at everything I do for you, and you don't appreciate it. You know, I used to know someone who called her children ungrateful wretches all the time. They, you know, or they can be for a cause. They can say, look at everything I've done for the cause. Nobody cares about this the way that I care about it, which is a real key to it. You know, that no one else cares as much as I do. People who struggle with pride need an emotional connection to feel whole, which makes sense because they're fundamentally insecure, and so they need to have some sort of emotional connection that connects them to other people. But this is, remember last week when we talked about sentimentality, and that struck everybody as kind of an odd thing to say is a symptom of pride. People who struggle with pride are because emotional connection is so important to them. They often think that the emotional connection is all they need, or all that is sufficient for everything. So the definition of sentimentality I gave you last week included things like going to worship, and if it wasn't an emotionally fulfilling experience, then it wasn't a good enough experience, or being satisfied with having the right emotions. So that virtue signaling is a real demonstration of pride. You know, see, I have the right emotion, I care about this. But as long as the right emotion is elicited or demonstrated, then I don't have to go any further. I don't have to think it through. The emotion is all that really matters. All of the habits of the heart create an idol. In the case of people who struggle with pride, the idol is the self. And it would be good, frankly, if you idolized them also. They love to hear things like, "Oh, she just gives so much to everyone," or she just does so much. She works so hard for those children, and so those kinds of things feed that vacancy that's in the middle of them. And one of the issues with pride is, am I fundamentally lovable? Especially if I'm not doing anything. Okay. we all struggle with that to some extent or another, but the person who struggles with pride is going to be terribly concerned that if they can't do something to be useful, they have no purpose in life and therefore they are not lovable. Which is kind of sad if you think about it. But it is the way that they often respond to things. So they are always busy on other people's behalf, looking for ways to fill in their own insecurity.
So would you say that in this sense, it's that emotional connection is what I need to feel, and it never gets to that true sacrificial love that comes with true intimacy, you know, where there's sacrificial love on both sides? Is that?
Well, I think that the emotional connection is deeply tied to the need to be appreciated.
So it's not really me understanding you, it's me using you to feel good about myself.
Or you understanding me, because ultimately you understanding me is more important. These are all complicated. We all struggle with it at one point or another, but some of us,
part of our life,
right? Some of us can be, for some of us, this is the way we approach the world. And the person who struggles with pride, they can be very quiet. They can be, they don't have to be flamboyant. They can be utterly devoted, but still very controlling, and very much in need of having this kind of affirmation that you do so much for all of us, or however you want to look. But that it's always, they're very susceptible to flattery because they want and need approval so badly. And they can be, like I said, they can be very quiet. The quieter they are, the more passive aggressive they tend to be, but they can be very, very quiet. Any other questions, comments? You'll have to speak out because I can only see 5 of you. Okay. Now I have to move my little table of people. There are varieties of pride, and there are in that group of 9 habits that we talked about at the beginning. Pride affects 3 of them. One is straight out pride. The other is mendacity or deceit or untruthfulness. And the third is envy. So if you look at it from the classical definitions, vanity, which is a form of pride, needs admirers. And so it's linked to deception or mendacity. Conceit needs inferiors, and is linked to envy. Arrogance needs no one to feel proud of itself. So I once worked with a guy who was a very gifted, talented person, and knew a lot about a lot of things. He was a first-generation immigrant to this country. He was brought here as a child. He had grown up in the difficult part of a major city, and managed to get a full ride to a major university. And so was very, very proud of his accomplishments. But the challenge for him was that he had to be the smartest person in the room at all times. He was the only expert that anybody could have, and it didn't matter what the topic was, which made him very difficult to work with, because there were things that he didn't know, But his insecurity made it important for him to be the very best at everything. And so you can see people like that, but that kind of arrogance doesn't so much need inferiors or need admirers as it just needs to assert itself. And I think arrogance is a matter of self-assertion as much as anything. We will get to the other two, but today we're going to concentrate on that last one. And this is just a little list of some of the consequences of pride. It can smother other people. You matter only in the way that you reflect me or that you need me. So other people become props to the stage show. So that people who deal with pride are often not as caring as they imagine themselves to be. It leads inevitably to calamity, to self-contempt and self-pity, I think. Intellectual arrogance and overestimating one's ability, setting unrealistic goals or refusing limits. Proverbs says the wise are cautious and they turn away from evil, but the fool throws off restraint and is careless. All of those things will lead to calamity in some form or another, personal or in a group if the person is leading. And the ideal self that a person that struggles with pride carries within them will eventually run into reality. And reality has, as you all know, a terrible way of beating our ideal self up. And that will lead to self-loathing and self-pity. Pride undermines community by secretly holding other people in contempt. And it alienates people from God. People who struggle with pride are often functionally atheists because they really struggle with pride being at the center of things.
Questions?
Yeah, questions. I'm going to take this down for a minute so I can see everybody. Questions, comments, new things to think about?
My own impression is we can all think of people or a person that fits these things, but none of us want to believe it of ourselves.
Well, there is that Howard.
That probably will be consistently the case.
Yeah, it will be.
All the way through this conversation.
We will always be able to think of stories of other people. Yes. So, anybody else comment?
Oh, yes.
Well, I will say that it does shed some light on some of my own behaviors over the last 75 years. So I agree with Howard, but I also am seeing a mirror coming up here in this wall ahead of me. It's like, So it's okay though. It's all right.
Yeah. One of the, if I was proud, then I wouldn't be perfect. Mike, that's like the one I thought I made a mistake once, but I was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess one thing I'll say is I'm just amazed at how nuanced pride is and all of its little permutations and things I didn't think of would be categorized as pride really are part and parcel of pride. So I'm like, oh, okay. And so I don't know, some of the things I think maybe in some of the comments, sometimes I'm trying to understand what does that really, I'm trying to make that connection. The sentimentality from the last time I think it was controlling or something, thinking, okay, how is that pride? It's trying to understand that. So anyway, it's been enlightening.
I was going to ask, so I would think that as we go through all of them, there's going to be pieces or I'll just say for myself, that seem to hit home. Maybe one of them will be the one I think is the biggest challenge for myself. But what do you recommend? Just praying? I mean, I guess, so let's say you decide that this is the one, this is the challenge I have, and I fit, all these categories or whatever one it is. What do you recommend as far as just praying about it, just being more aware of it?
I think, Sharon, it's a bit of a challenge. It's not only being more aware of it. I know in my own case, in working through all of this, I was blessed with a couple of really good spiritual directors, because these are spiritual issues. This is not, I mean, therapy can help, but it's not fundamentally about therapy. This is about a transformation of who you are, and of learning to put faults and all in the hands of Christ. I mean, one of the things that over the years I have found most difficult for people who are in direction, and it was certainly most difficult for me, is to get people past the notion that Jesus loves me in spite of myself and because Jesus has to, okay? Which is sort of the unwritten text that everybody has. He has to love me, and he loves me in spite of myself, to understanding their own worth in the eyes of God. And part of understanding your worth is then also being able to come to terms with your faults. And we're going to talk about next week about humility, and both the things that people fear about humility and the way that humility counteracts pride. You can do it by yourself to some point, but at some point you're going to need a companion that you can talk to and sort of get it all out of your system with, and identify it. The other thing is, and I know this has never been the tradition here, but reconciliation is a gift and a sacrament for a reason. And coming for reconciliation and talking about this and about who I am and the ways that it interferes with the work of Christ in my life, with the work of grace in my life, is healing beyond explanation. I can't explain to people how different it will make their lives. Most people are worried about being embarrassed, but it's a change in your life that, to my knowledge, and I've done my share of therapy, I've done other things, there is no other way to have that change in your life. So direction and confession are big parts of it. Journaling, actually sitting down and taking a hard look at your own self. And most of us don't want to do that. I'd rather not. Personally, if you really like that, well, God bless you. But most of us don't want to talk about it. So anyway, or think about it.
In a related issue, Catherine raised the issue, if I'm seeking to do good things, and am I seeking to belong or to contribute, is that necessarily pride? And it doesn't, part of the reason it's important to sit with these things and to both pray and reflect on them is that the one is not necessarily the other. So if you sit, for example, with your commitment to cultivating virtue, or for lack of a better way of putting it, a desire to be God's person or to be a good person, that's not necessarily about pride, but there are telltale signs that if it is pride. For example, you may be tempted to think that you're the only person who seeks to be a good person or to cultivate virtue, or the only person in your circle of friends. The whole kind of language that suggests I and I alone am the one who sees these things would suggest it's pride. On the other hand, if you feel, if in looking at it, you conclude, no, I'm seeking to pursue a goal that I think is really God-given. And lots of other people are on this path with me and always have been. Well, then that suggests that maybe it's not about pride. I had a conversation over coffee once. One of Natalie's, one of the folks in Natalie's last church took me to task for something I put on Facebook, which was really sincerely just offered up as a laugh. And she took huge umbrage at it and said that she thought, that it wasn't very loving. It didn't accord with the spirit of the parish. And I should take it down and apologize for it. So I sat down with her over coffee to explain what my motivation was and how I had intended for it to be taken. And she told me as we talked for a while, because I'd seen this pattern with her a lot, and she said, well, I have a calling to righteous indignation.
That was her gift, right?
That was her gift.
Did you spit out your coffee at that point? I'm just wondering.
The inner editor, Paul, really scrambled at that point. And but what I finally, what I said to her, I said, well, that must be a real burden. And she allowed us, no, it really wasn't.
No, I really am evil.
And at that point, I just didn't know what to do after that point. It was, if you react to a conversation like that, now that I would say is probably a point of pride. The other thing I wanted to observe, I don't know whether all of you were thinking about this or not, but apropos of Natalie's point that these things are about healing, I think sometimes, whether it's in our own lives or it's in the life of someone else, I think sometimes it's harder with pride than any other of the obstacles to grace to feel sympathetic to the person who's bedeviled by pride, because they put arrogance out there as such a defense that it's difficult to be sympathetic with them. And sitting with the dynamics behind pride, sometimes I think the thing that's maybe helpful in terms of caring for people who are prideful is the ability to realize how much it isolates them and how much they really need help. And it's not always easy. It's not always easy to do. I mean, people bedeviled by pride, I've often said over the years that the worst person in the world to work for is someone with a raging inferiority complex who covers it with a raging superiority complex. And I've worked with one or two of those people, and it really is hard to feel sympathetic or open to trying to build a relationship with them. especially if you work for them or share life with them in one way or another. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
It
Yeah.
does. Go ahead.
No, Kathy, please.
I was just going to ask because I'm like, what is God calling us to respond to when we feel like we're dealing with someone, with pride in full form without being prideful or judging? How do we, when it's interfering with relationships and intimacies, what's our response to that without being prideful ourselves, going, I'm right and you're wrong kind of thing?
Well, you know how St. Augustine said that we all have this God-sized hole in the middle of us? I think for people who struggle with pride, that's the thing you have to remember, that what they need is God. Are you going to get past it always? No. I mean, read the literature in therapy. Trying to cure a narcissist is pretty much not possible. You can't do it because you can't fill the hole, and they can't imagine something greater than them could fill the hole. But managing your own boundaries, remembering that they're broken. I mean, the hardest part for them is to remember their own brokenness, because of the sort of underlying fundamental insecurity that goes through all of it. If you read the sort of ancient literature about it, while this applies to everyone, there's a sort of ancient tradition around what they call holy tears, about the conversion of the heart at this point that helps those folks realize their both their inner brokenness and the way it's distorted who they are and what they are. I mean, part of what we're talking about here is the cultivation of virtue. And Mike had asked earlier about the difference between pride and self-esteem. And we're going to talk a little bit, I hope, this morning about the healthy versions of those. But it's the best thing you can do is keep your boundaries and remember that they're broken. At some point, at least for me, the image that helps is I always have a wounded bird in my hands. No matter who it is, we're all wounded birds. And we're all that fragile.
Natalie, I was just thinking about something you said earlier, and I was thinking, I guess, you could feel good about something that you were part of or made happen, but you've always got to be checking that because you build momentum and maybe you drift off. Okay, we did something that worked for the youth group, and then we built it into working for the church, and now we do it as a community, and now it's a statewide project, and now I feel, so I've drifted off into maybe the proud section versus just, and I don't know if that's like an inward, outward focus. Like, how do you stay, every now and then you got to check yourself to see if you're going in the right direction or are you starting to veer off? Or
I've got what I think is a great sermon or story in this morning's sermon that sort of covers exactly that issue, Mike.
How the values that got you started down one path get twisted. So in the name of not repeating something, listen for that this morning.
Okay, do you want me to go tell everybody else now? Hey, you got to be in there this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I will say, relative to the boundaries and the impact that it has, though I am saying that it's important to realize that someone in your circle of relationships might be bedeviled by pride, and to realize how much spiritual peril they're in and how isolated they are. I'm not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that you ought to subject yourself to any and every kind of abuse as a result. Um, I worked with a bishop who went from being a youth leader and minister in Nablus to being Bishop of Jerusalem in the Middle East. That he's no longer the bishop there and has been dead for quite a while now. When he became bishop, he gained 100 to 150 pounds. His voice dropped 3 octaves, and he began speaking in the first person plural. It was spooky. I mean, I in private told a friend I had read Faust. I just never expected to work for him, and it wasn't a tenable working relationship. It lasted about a year, and then I had to say, I'm going to do something else. This is not going to work. I've seen the same thing in marital relationships. I had in the first church I ever served a long time ago, I had a young guy who was really driven by pride at one level and was a raging perfectionist and controlling. He would berate his wife for not drying the sink out after every meal so that there weren't water spots in the sink. He would monitor his wife's weight and the weight of the children. He himself would undergo periods of time where he was either, in the gym all the time or binge eating. And in one violent spasm one Saturday when they were delayed getting out, and he thought that his younger son was tugging on his coat saying, "Fatty, fatty." His child was actually, in fact, saying, "Daddy, daddy." He hauled off and backhanded his son in the face. And when his wife challenged him about his behavior, he slapped and backhanded her all the way down the hallway until she fell into the tub in the bathroom on the second floor of their house. And when his wife called to say what had happened, I said, "Right, get the kids, leave the house. If you have family you can go stay with, go. If you don't, you need to go somewhere. You need to go to a shelter or what have you. And the first thing you need to do is to protect yourself." So you have to be very discerning about this. You can't open yourself to endless kinds of abuse and misuse. It's worth not returning in kind, the kind of behavior to people who are prideful. It's always easy to be tempted when somebody's being prideful to take them down a notch or two.
Yeah, it's like, how do I, it's either feels like sometimes you're either enabling that behavior or you're punishing that behavior.
Yeah. And it's really tough, and you have to name your own boundaries. And sometimes you have success with it, and sometimes the only thing you can do is to pray for that person and protect yourself. Sometimes you can be good-natured about it, depending on the nature of your relationship. And if someone's just having a moment marked by pride, you can say something good-natured. We're having coffee one morning at church, and two of the older men at the table were talking about their diets and all the rest of it. And one of the men sort of talked about how he was a vegetarian, and he didn't eat meat. And then as he continued to brag about his diet. He let slip that occasionally he has chicken or maybe some fish. And another man sitting at the table who was about his age leaned over and said to him, "They're animals, you know." It was kind of a good-natured sort of poke. It had absolutely zero effect on the first man.
Yeah. So let me, because we're winding up here and we can get to some of the rest of this later. The struggle with pride is not the same thing as feeling proud. Okay, so you discover a new drug that's really effective in treating cancer, for example. You feel proud. You should feel proud, but it's a transitory emotion. You know, pride always, the Bible talks about, it's really interesting in the Bible almost always talks about pride in relationship to someone wanting to climb the heights. Okay, they want to be on top of the mountain. So pride always wants to be up there on the top, above everybody else, the best. That's not the same as feeling proud because you've accomplished something. That's not the same as, you know, your 8-year-old who's playing soccer, who scores a goal that wins the game, you know, and they come off the field and you can tell how proud they are of themselves. But that's a transitory emotion. It's not tied up in their ultimate self-worth. And I think that that's a distinction that's hard for us to make. And you know, that's an interesting one too, because it can also come up with a sense of false humility, which is one of the other real issues with pride, is how, say you receive honors for something you do. You're named, I don't know, you're acclaimed as the greatest pianist in the world. And you go, oh, it's nothing really. It doesn't matter. Okay, the refusal to feel proud at that moment is a false humility. And a false humility is a kind of pride. Oh, I'm nothing. Nobody ever listens to me. We don't need to talk about what I think. That's false humility.
Humble brag.
It's a humble brag.
Mhm.
Okay, and so it's not. It's an expression of the wrong kind of pride. It's fine to feel proud. It's not. One of the essences of humility, and we'll talk about this more next week, is that proper humility appreciates both your gifts and your faults. It knows what they are. Humility doesn't deny the gift. Most people think it does, but it doesn't. Humility never denies your value, but it never ignores your faults. So, and one of the things I wanted to go back to something Paul said earlier, the subtlety and the amount of thought that has gone into these things in the tradition is really extraordinary. And we don't talk, and I've said this last week in my sermon, and I've said it before, we don't talk about the cultivation of virtue or wholeness. That's what virtue is about. You know, it comes from the root for strength in Latin. We don't talk about that anymore. And when we do talk about it, we talk about it as though it makes us some sort of self-righteous prig, which isn't the case. Virtue makes us stronger. and makes us and heals us. And these things then enable us to flourish, to reveal that image of God that all of us bear. And so I think the subtlety of it is so that we don't get tripped up by all the hidden obstacles. And because people have thought for a long time about this, it is really, truly only in the last 250 years that human beings have stopped talking about it and thinking about it in a productive way. I'll give you this, and then we're going to have to go, because I just thought this was fascinating. If you think about virtue, see if I can find it. Okay. In the 18th century, David Hume offered these very modern virtues: discretion, caution, enterprise, industry, assiduity, frugality, economy, good sense, prudence, and discernment. Okay, those are modern ones. He defined pride as an agreeable impression, which arises in the mind either in view of our virtue, beauty, riches, or powers, and by humility he means a disagreeable impression. And a disagreeable impression of our own holding of those virtues. It's a very modern list, but it has nothing to do with the things that really that really pull at us and that really take us away from God. You know, the list that the classical stuff in the church was taken of comes from Paul's list in Galatians: generosity, fortitude, which means strength or forbearance, patience, kindness, self-giving, obedience to God. Those are virtues that, compassion, that are a completely different list from what Hume talks about. And what Hume's talking about is basically the Protestant work ethic, although he was not a Christian. So the difference is tremendous, but we've cut ourselves off from a whole wisdom that helps us be more than we are right now. And that's why we're doing this. So, any other last comments?
It's good to see all of you.
Good to see everybody
We'll
this
look
morning.
forward to seeing some of you at church, and we'll imagine seeing some of you at the other church.
Okay. Blessings, everybody.
Blessings.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.